Thinking it's an act.
People have a tough time converting effort into time.
Let me slow down to speed up.
I like to believe I really lead with empathy.
I can't figure this out quick enough.
There's never a reason to be a jerk.
We have not done that.
No, nowhere close.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Stay Sharp. We're having conversations and stories around personal and professional development. I am your host, Jordan Ray, and your co-host, Rashad Tyler. And we are sharing with you how to become a problem solver, why you should consider viewing yourself as a problem solver, how to actually solve problems, because solving problems is the job. And one of the things that I've walked away with over the last few years is to see the connection between creativity and problem solving. I've had a lot of conversations with my peers about you're going to help a project because you know how to do a specific thing.
Yeah.
Like problem solver kind of covers it all, right?
Yeah. I think like especially people who, if you just want to execute, meaning yet you just want instruction, that's an entirely different way to participate in this business. But the highest paid or the most valuable people are obviously rewarded disproportionately because they can actually solve problems and sometimes hell identify them.
For sure. How would you describe your philosophy around problem solving?
So every problem at the end of the day can be solved in a number of ways. I think that there is a value in being able to leverage a set of filters, at least from my standpoint. I always try to consider what knowledge is necessary for me to kind of get through a thing. I need to also understand what resources are going to either be useful or at my disposal or beyond my range. Because you think, even if I isolate or go back to knowledge in the first place, if you have a problem and you think that it should be solved a particular way, how much value would it be to you or to the people that you're working with that you had useful consult or that you did some deep research around the specific problem or the periphery items around it so that you didn't make a quick choice that was undervetted in terms of what you needed to really become in order to be a person worthy of making the choice. Because just because it lands on your desk doesn't mean that you are the person who should be solving it. But moving on to like resources, after you've run down the knowledge filter, then you should look at what resources you've determined are necessary, right? What is the cost connected to them? What is the time connected to it? If there are people, like, are they in town, out of town, remote? Are they even available to contribute? Like, these are all things that should also be a part of your calculus in terms of what you end up deciding is the best path. And lastly, and probably most importantly, like, figure out what the effort is that it'll take in order to move you, your organization, or your problem along. I really think that people have a tough time converting effort into time. So the most important thing for me now, as I've matured as a professional, is to lock in terms of what it's going to cost in time. So if I say, if there is a project that requires new branding, social media campaign, an out-of-home campaign, there's a bespoke audio component, we have to fit for casting for multiple roles. I'm going to go and break down every part of that so that we can really not say yes because we know that we will put forth the effort, which is just the muscle and the grunt. We're always going to do that. And people typically say yes there. The real question is like, how much time is it going to take for you to apply that effort and get the return? If you don't know that, you shouldn't freaking say yes. And so for me, and I want to be careful not to continue to expand on this, but those three things for me help me get a lot more narrow and a hell of a lot more clear before I'm saying, here's how I want to solve this thing. And maybe that's also such a high up version of problem solving that it could get lost on certain people.
I think that that's a great approach when there's a problem and you see a problem, you're checking down. Do I have the knowledge? Is that the problem? Do I need to go get the knowledge? Do I have the resources? Do I need to go get those?
Yeah.
What about the effort? Do I need to go get that
Yeah.
and put that up? And it's interesting because I think of resources as being something that feels a little bit more tool and software driven,
Yes.
or even
Can be.
Yeah, like you mentioned an example of having the right people and those pieces in place, and those obviously people are absolutely a resource. But on the flip side of that, tools or software for me sometimes is the barrier between you being able to figure out a problem and you not knowing how to even approach it.
That's right.
For sure.
That's right. And it's not lost on me how important it is to have, even if you don't actually leverage it, access to people who can help advise you, who have possibly gotten the hard-earned experience that hopefully you can avoid. Because I don't think it's accepted enough that experience is the most expensive way to learn anything.
Absolutely. I would add to that on my philosophy around problem solving is that it's important to set time to even think about solving the problem and to view thinking as an activity. Mm-hmm. So we know that we're in our thoughts every day. We're thinking about things, but are we actually scheduling the time on our calendar, however you planner, however you do your thing? Are we actually setting time to think about the problem that we're solving before we get into let me just dive in and like execute and try to solve this without really thinking through and understanding and diagnosing what I'm actually trying to solve? That's where you find out if you need the knowledge, if you need the effort, if you need the resources, and then what kind of time you need to apply to that. But first and foremost is just the concept that thinking is an act, just like creating, mood boarding, vision casting, producing something, directing something, writing something. Thinking is a task too. So that's what I would add to that. I want to always come to a problem with a solution. And obviously that requires thoroughly thinking about it and getting serious about just that mindset.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
To set the stage for more of what we're about to share, we have experienced fast track growth. And I say that and my voice kind of, because I'm like, fast track. We've been on a fast track.
Yeah.
But we have experienced a lot of growth as an agency between, I want to say maybe 2021, maybe 2020 to 2021, and then 2021 to into 2022. There was just 6 and 8 months that would go by and we'd look back and we're like, this is completely different. Like we need now different resources. We need now different knowledge sets. We need to put up more effort over here and less effort over there. So on this fast track that we've been on as an agency, Rare Label, but also individually, right? Mm-hmm. Just the growth that professionally we've had individually. What for you is that aha moment where you were like, yeah, I need to figure out this problem. I need to solve this thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to solve it with a resource, with my knowledge, with all of the above. But that aha moment that you've had recently or over the last few years.
I wonder if you remember this though, just like the time where we were just using the tools that we had always used or we saw other people use, which are basically dry erase boards, and maybe like our sophisticated level was a digital notepad. I think for me, I've been a long time fan of Evernote. I think we did a little bit trying to like bring Slack into the equation, but we were using those, I won't say tried and true, but just like kind of the inherited tools that most people use to organize projects, especially when you don't have a lot of projects or you have a simple project. Those tools are plenty. But at an agency level, when you got multiple onboards, you got multiple projects, multiple sprints or different tasks inside of projects, it becomes really, really hard to track the start time, end time, where are notes going, how are you managing your internal communications, because you can't have a iMessage chat and keep all of the different things and follow links and follow notes, like everything falls apart in there if it's multiple conversations, right? So you have that. Even if you create multiple chats inside of that, still not really sustainable because we've done it. Email threads start to get too long. You start losing information in that way. And I'm sharing all of this because I think some people are probably going through these pain points. And as we share how we solved it, I want you to be very clear about we identify how hard it is to manage things and what possibilities we exhausted. I also want to add to the number of things on the comms front that were a challenge, or at least something that needs to be considered, because we checked internal comms. You still got client comms, right? How you communicate literally with your clients. You still have vendors who are an entirely different group and have different needs. You also have partners who also have a vested interest, and they may have more of a toe into the execution part of things. So they are part-time players that don't necessarily get the full process, but they want to have some access to the more special notes. So how do you do all of this stuff? And so like we were at big frustration. I think Jordan was looking at me crazy every day. What are we going to do? Like, we can't sustain this. We're not getting what we're supposed to get done. And so I spent some time, which I normally do, in some meditation of some form. And we came away with adding project management software to the core of how we run the agency. And our PM software of choice, we will share if you're asking. Jordan's already an expert on it. I think it's pretty much well known, but I am mindful that there's a benefit to us being a free agent on this front. If there's somebody that would like to, do business with us as our PM software of endorsement, that's the right word. But anyway, we use this PM software to make sure that we can collapse all of those different layers of complexity into one space. We can tag people in different moments. We can have specific chats that are connected to specific projects. And when something is noted in that chat, you know exactly what the context of the conversation is because you can see the header that it belongs to that particular chat. Email automation started to become a thing. So like we really, really depend on our PM software, but it's almost embarrassing to know that we were trying to run multiple projects or an agency through a whiteboard, which we have whiteboards. You can't run it like a church potluck.
At some point, you got to migrate over to something a little bit more robust and professional. It's tough though, because it's tough to know when that time is. And I think we were starting to get so inundated with requests and different things, and we, people wanting us to do this and that.
Yeah. And
there was no way to really organize it and keep it all clean without just being in your email all the time. And so there comes a point where you're just, something else has to work, but you got to get to that point in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that, takes a lot of effort in and of itself. But here we are. We use the PM software daily now. That's where everything is. And I remember after we really got the hang of using it, because it is a learning curve, y'all. Any PM software is going to be a learning curve. And so
any new software add-on is going to be a learning curve.
Yeah, you're going to have to learn how to use it. Mm. And it took us months. And by the time we learned how to use it pretty well, I remember thinking, or not even thinking, but we talked about, you specifically said, I feel so much more at peace because I don't have these tasks and these checklists just stored in my head anymore. Mm. I can peacefully go live my life or go to sleep, travel, whatever it is I got to do, get on a flight, and I'm not worried about forgetting something, missing something. It's all logged somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think that now we don't even think about that anymore. It's just more, it's natural. But at the time, we were able to transition from keeping everything in our head to it's in the PM software. And it'll be there whenever I go to it to pick it up.
Somewhere, somebody watching this is screaming like, you didn't try Google G Suite. Yes, we did. And spreadsheets and all of that. And it ain't enough. And I'll add one other thing to this. We knew we needed to go into software that we could grow into over the long frame. So you notice like organizations that make a software decision end up being married to it for a very long time. You think about an airline, for example, they have software that's running their entire business, and the cost of educating or even implementing new software is too steep. So they need to vet whoever their software vendor is or whatever systems they use or software that they build and own themselves. And they're just like moving version controls up the stack because they cannot afford to have made a decision 10, 15, 30, 40, 50 years ago that they can't grow with, because otherwise the business ends up taking a loss in a calendar year because you're spending all of your time and your resources re-educating people and implementing. So we needed to make that decision mindfully too. I don't want to make it seem as if, oh, we just jumped on. Nah, we needed to figure out what it needed to do, and it needed to be something that could have us on board up to 100, employees through it.
Yeah. We have not done that.
No, nowhere close.
We did our research and got on the right PM software for sure.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a different spin to my answer on an aha moment that I've had with solving a problem.
Yeah.
And that comes earlier this year when I was becoming increasingly indifferent, maybe irritated within the work that I was doing. And I really felt muddy around the contribution that I was bringing every day to our team, to our agency, to you and myself. And I think looking back, I'm still processing and I'm in hindsight, but looking back, I'm wondering that was almost a growth spurt for me. That was a fast track for me, just individually being able to step away. I stepped away, took a break, sabbatical, long leave. I took some weeks off, and it was supposed to be about 6 weeks at first. I think it ended up being a little bit closer to 8. And I didn't chill during that time. I stepped my effort up, actually. I stepped
very active.
Yeah, it was a very active break. And I spent a lot of my time thinking, that I've already mentioned. I've spent a lot of my time writing. If you follow me personally, you know what I'm talking about. Like, I spent a lot of time writing, documenting, again, just reading different books too, getting into reading for leisure, getting into reading for education and history education, not just business education. Like I think that for me right now, it's like I'm tired of reading about self-help and business stuff.
Yeah.
But I put in a lot of effort during my leave in order to solve the problem that I was bringing to my team. And I was in meetings and I was really agitated, and I just felt uninspired to show up every day. And I think it's so crazy even saying this, because the people who really witnessed this, were around me. And I think that they could vouch for, like, yeah, you was kind of like, you was on some other stuff. But if you aren't around me every day and you don't know me, and you just see posts on Instagram or this, that, and the third, you're going to say, oh, you look like nothing was wrong. Like, that you just was having a good time. And it's like, no, I wasn't well, and I wasn't showing up for the company that I've helped to build. So that was me solving my own issue, but I felt like it would help the greater good. So I'm like, let me slow down to speed up whatever it is that, I ended up doing. And I felt really good about it after. I felt like I came out with a victory and a reconnection to what I'm going to go out there and do next. And here we are some months later now.
Yeah.
And it was good.
Congratulations on time well spent. Not a lot of people will accept that they need to make a change. And I acknowledge your awareness or what you shared about having the option. So that's even cooler, right? Yeah. The reason that any of us should aspire to build resource or build capital is to improve the quality of our life experience, not just blow it on a first class flight. I think, and no disrespect to the first class flight, I just think that if you could find that you spent your money on physical, psychological, and emotional health, even though that could be, argued as a part of that, I think the world is better when you're your best self. So,
yeah, it was really tough to finally say I need a break, because it felt like, oh, I'm being weak, or I can't
Mm-hmm.
figure this out quick enough. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but if nothing changes, nothing is going to change. I'm not going in a good direction right now. So I have to put pause on things. And also I had to almost justify to myself why I was taking a sabbatical. I'm like, I've always had a job. I've always worked. I've worked in a lot of industries that required me to work on the weekends. I've rarely had consecutive days off. Like, I don't even know what that is. I also, for the last 5 years for sure, I've run a business and full time. And I'm just like, I've had this show up mentality. Otherwise I will not make any money. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a break. It's been 5 years. I've hit that mark. I even did a lot of research on sabbaticals before I decided to set everything down. Okay. I'm leaving, and it was pretty sudden. If I were to go back, I would maybe have taken it sooner, but given a little bit more time, notice.
Yeah.
That's it. Really.
Yeah.
Next, I want us to share a little bit about how we support when we're working with other problem solvers. Like I said, other creatives are problem solvers. We're all problem solvers.
Mm-hmm.
So in what way do you support and provide that nurturing? Do you nurture?
I mean, I like to believe I really lead with empathy. A decision I made a long time ago is that there's never a reason to be a jerk. Under no circumstances am I going to be a jerk. And I know that a lot of people decide to behave poorly, but I just don't ever see that there's a reason to make somebody else the receiver of my lack of control or perspective. And I don't mean that to inflame anybody who would have it was out of my control narrative. And I don't care to fight with you that that's what it is or not. But to track with the question, I really try to provide high level support after, really deeply ensuring that I hear the problem, which you can't actually always do. You can literally only try, because we all have our individual needs. And more importantly, all of your decisions are going to be state dependent anyway. So if somebody is in crisis, there's nothing you can do to help them through whatever problem they're coming to you with. But from a high level, I always try and provide just some general suggestions and some general guidance. I try to provide like links to people that are smarter than I am. I think that when you position yourself like you have all of the answers, and the reality is that nobody does, but specifically to our engine and what we do and the seat that I'm often sitting in, I'm only the subject matter expert in this small sliver. And so if I'm making the people that report to me dependent on my knowledge, we're going to have a very stupid organization, meaning we should be going outside of our organization to find the smartest people who can inform our leaders in their individual tracks on how to best solve for their specific problem types. Because your leadership ain't the leader in your division. You can't depend on the CEO to be the advisor for the head of HR. That's not how that works, right? So I'm very careful not to be in a position where I'm allowing someone to mistake the role for knowledge. And the other thing about like being able to push suggestion to people, it's easy to do that when somebody is an A player, right? So I can give an A player a suggestion like, hey, maybe you should go and talk to this person. Here's a set of resources that I saw. It's a little bit beyond or not something that I've had a chance to deal with personally, but it might be of good use to you here. And an A player will take that information and or those lemons and make lemonade. They'll make strawberry Kool-Aid because they'll find a way to sauce it up, right? A person who's a B player, I'm trying to recognize that from the seat that I sit in, and I know they actually don't want to solve problems for the most part. They need a set of instructions to follow. So sometimes I'm having to make a distinction between who I'm talking to and what their needs are. And even sometimes it can be senior leadership that I'm going, okay, because you're uncomfortable, let me hit you with some instructions on this.
He talking about me, y'all. Because I will literally I don't know what to do right here.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of times where we can have a high level. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm an A and a B player sometimes.
Yeah. And it's subject based, right? Or problem based.
Mm-hmm.
You're so funny, man.
He shooting shots. So is that what it is?
No, you think it's always think it's sublime.
Sublime. Yeah. I think I'm not sure. I know I cut you off, but
no,
I
that's
think
right.
knowing knowing who you're talking to, knowing who you're supporting is best, in a way to show how you're going to support them through that. Cause we all I think everyone's intentions are good. We're trying to really show up and do our best work, and it's difficult. Sometimes you don't know. You need the shoulder to lean on.
1,000.
I definitely show up for people who ask for training, ask me to show them my processes. I'm really big on showing up for people and doing that development work, and even putting the practice in with people on a macro level, right? Like you're macro, I'm a little bit more micro in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of shared, I want to share problem solving approaches, and I support on a high level with kind of setting the tone for how we should go about solving this problem, right? This challenge. And then I, on a micro, might say, hey, like, I want to sit with you for an hour and go through like actually how to do that. Like what softwares that you need, what resources that you need. Maybe we need to move you over to a digital calendar. Maybe we need to, a few weeks ago, a friend of mine that has an agency reached out and she said, I want to see your ClickUp. I want to see it. And I was like, the best way for her to understand why I talk so highly of ClickUp is for me to get on screen share with her and show her a folder. Show her what my templates look like. Because if I just sent the template and I didn't have any context for how I'm using the template, I think the message, could get lost in translation. And then it's like, well, this template, it's hard. I can't figure it out. But if she knew how I used it, she could see. So I've never shied away with showing people my process, and here it is. Like, let's look at it
so
together.
ClickUp, you're going to have to come on board now as a sponsor, since Jordan kind of, let the cat out of the bag. I was hoping that some competitor might, make it a competitive conversation.
They still will if they want to.
We use ClickUp as the project management software, but I'm not sure if I cut you off or not.
It's fine. I mean, you did, but it's okay. But
okay.
ClickUp, what's up?
Yeah.
I love me some ClickUp. Let me just say it. And I am a verified power user on ClickUp. Got the little check mark. So that feels kind of cool. Like I feel kind of flexing. Like when I click my little picture in there, it shows the got a little check mark. Yeah. Whatever.
You one of them ones.
I'm one of the ones, the ones. But that's really all I have to say there. I will wrap that idea up with the person on the other side that's getting the support should also be prepared to initiate and do their own work. Sometimes I have felt that people will ask me questions that are so general. I'm like, you couldn't have really put in some time to figure out what the problem is you're actually asking about, because you're not asking questions to me that I could even answer back to you that are going to be helpful, because they're too general, So I think that if I'm making sense, the person on the other end has to be able to diagnose, spend that time thinking about their problem, understand if it's a knowledge thing, an effort thing, and a resource thing. And then when you're coming to someone for support, or you're able to lean on someone for support, you gotta know what you're asking for too. Mm-hmm. Otherwise your problem's not going to get solved, because you just still haven't figured out what the problem even is. Yeah.
Well put.
What about methods that you're currently implementing to become a better problem solver, or do things more or less when it comes to problem solving?
I mean, growing yourself as a problem solver absolutely starts with you recognizing that there is room to go, and trying to identify who actually are reputable, useful, and highly available in terms of like the information that they've already written down in book form or otherwise, for you to be able to access some things. So for me, I'm really leaning into first the people that I qualify as elite problem solvers. So one of the people that come to mind is Richard Feynman. There's a book that I have there called The Joy of Finding Things Out. But Richard Feynman was the gentleman who I'm not sure what Ivy he's from, but he was the guy who found the O-ring issue for the Challenger explosion. Mm-hmm. And so when you go and research the path that he comes or leverages in order to come to solutions or come to conclusions, he's really leveraging a consistent set of philosophies or a certain approach to help him isolate each of the most probable paths. So he's able to track all of the things that he's done or kind of walk through, logging where there could possibly be some overlap with the things that are examined. And without making it my interpretation on Feynman's process, just note that he's one of the greatest log thinkers of our, the last 100 or so years. The other thing that I think is really important is to make sure that I'm backtracking and looking at what things I've written down about myself and we talked about this elsewhere, using ChatGPT or using some other person to examine my thinking through my journaling. Because if you can have a way, even if you have a therapist or somebody else, you need somebody to play back to you what your normal tendencies are. So if you're a person who is always running hot and you don't know that it's a problem or possibly hindering you, you probably should make sure that you have somebody inside of your internal network, inside of your circle, who can give you that feedback sooner than later. And that is a surefire way to help you improve your thinking and also your behavior.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that was, kind of targeted again at me.
No, man.
Anyways, I run a little hot some days. It is what it is. I think the thing too that I am working to implement a method for, I'm not sure if I quite have the method, but there is something that I want to do a little bit less of when I'm working and trying to problem solve, is assuming that someone else can solve the problem and assuming that someone else got it because we talked about it or we briefed about it, and that I just kind of set it and forget it. And I don't come back and check in as often with that person. Like, are we on track? Like, are we sure that we understand what we need to do here? And I've kind of fallen into a habit of trying not to micromanage and stepping away and delegating and just really like turning my head and maybe even my back to, okay, cool, we've talked about this person got it. And that's just not the case. Like, I think we can't just cut the communication. We have to still talk to that person through that. And everything is a collab. They
may need motivation, different types of support,
Yeah. So I'm focused on that, less assuming, more communicating, more methods on letting the information be known and repeating myself if I have to. And not even repeating myself if I have to, but being okay with repeating myself. Just like, oh, I need to say this 4 or 5 times before anyone really remembers. Because I have a habit of saying something once, maybe twice, and just thinking that, cool, everybody knows how I feel about that or where I stand or what needs to be done.
Can I double down on that?
I'm sure you want to.
If you're in a leadership role, don't assume that you can say something one time and everybody's got it. It makes no sense that you would assume that you're so powerful that you can say something to someone and they carry it out without additional nudges, additional instruction, additional resources, and a commitment from you through consistency of energy. Not something you mentioned a week ago or 2 weeks ago or even yesterday and go like, why isn't that done? That's not going to be sufficient enough leadership for real people who have real problems and other things that are distracting them. Do you have it in an email follow-up and a text message and all of those things with resources prepared for them? Like, if you want somebody to do something for you at a high level, give them the support that they need in order to carry it out. Otherwise, you're fooling yourself in terms of the leader that you are and how things actually should and can go. Because if you wanted to win, then you got to show up with a winning energy and you have to lead them into the success, right? As athletes and what we've experienced as athletes for sure, and in other team environments, you find that when the best player works out the hardest, runs the hardest, and gives the most effort, it makes it much more difficult for the 13th player to be soft about how they go about practices, right? Everybody's got to put it in when the leader goes the hardest.
100%. I think that that's a great high note to end on. Thanks for joining us today on Stay Sharp. We will see you next time. Until then, check out the show notes. Check out Stay Sharp Graham. Holla at us. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you soon.